I got halfway through meeting minutes last night and the computer went on the fritz. So there's no meeting minutes, they're only half done.
Okay.
Sorry. I mostly just wanted to go over the work days. I didn't notice that anybody participated in the first one. Granted, we had
No,
snow
the
on
weather,
Saturday, but
yes.
it did warm up Sunday afternoon. I drove around later Sunday afternoon, did not see a single person had done anything.
Mm-hmm. Our area too.
Well, on your
Our
area. In our area, north of the following weekend, Prospect Heights Natural Resources volunteers came out and joined us, and we did a bunch of work at the Somerset, or not Somerset, Country Gardens Park there, right along they took out some of the buckthorn right along the park there, so it looks, you could actually see the water. It looks nice where they actually had herbicided, and we also got contacts, like emails from 3 people. One guy over by Stonegate and Wildwood, yeah,
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
we all got
right,
shut down.
right.
Yeah,
So we
right.
took care of his tree because they had a chainsaw. So they went over and took care of his tree, and
That was nice.
it's nice. And the guy on Kenilworth, backs up to the new assisted living on 83 in Kenilworth. He's right on the other side of the creek on the corner of 83 and Kenilworth from the assisted living place there. Somebody sent an email, and are these yours?
This is my wife and kids.
Hey,
I don't think they're expecting ice cream later.
come on in.
Hello.
Come on
How you
in.
doing, guys? Hi.
This is open to the public.
Yeah, we just have to be quiet, okay?
So I stopped by and visited with them for a while. He's got his own chainsaw. He's got quite a lot of big stuff that he's sort of working on. There's also a lot of erosion over there.
That's
I think we
pretty
talked
steep.
about it last
That's
time. It looks like somebody had put concrete down at some point, but quite a while ago on the north bank. And so he'd like some maybe some ideas on plants to replace the stuff he takes out. And,
Yeah, because it's a hard area because it come just before you get to the bridge.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
Now I know.
it's almost vertical, and you're
Yeah.
talking 10 feet before there's any kind of
So we
bank.
gave him referred him to the Natural Resources Commission for some planting ideas, and MWRD about the bridge because he thought
Right.
the erosion was kind of
Caused
getting
by
to
the
the bridge.
bridge,
But
or getting to the bridge.
it's a young couple, so he's
What's
got
his
energy.
last name? I think I got an email from him too. Was
The
it
email
Kai?
did not come from him, and I forgot. I don't think I ever got his last name. His name was Nick.
But you said it was Kenilworth.
Right on the corner of Kenilworth. It's a house that has been remodeled.
Right.
It took about a
Several-
year
New one.
remodeling it. Yeah,
Oh yes, I know what that is.
yeah. So,
I know who lives.
and then we got one more from Woodview Drive, which is the newer houses across west side of Schoenbeck.
Right.
They asked us to send a work crew.
Oh, I saw that.
you're
I don't
kidding.
have a way to respond through the McDonald Creek email. It would only have the response would only come from my own, right? They get forwarded to me, but I can't respond from that.
They were not
If you
forwarded
hit
to me.
If you hit reply all, I think it will go back through the Creek Commission. All of us would be copied, and then the person that sent
But it
would
would
be-
come from mine,
Yes.
my
Your
personal
personal
email.
email, yeah,
Well,
right.
see,
Right.
that's
Right,
funny.
so I didn't want to do that because at the time, I know the parties, I know the issues over there.
Right.
The creek is not actually their property, it's their
Across the
neighbor's property, and there's a little bit of,
Dissension.
why aren't you doing anything going, and I wanted, why don't you clean this, and so I didn't want to respond to say, we have no work crews, but I did stop over there after we finished at the Park District property just to see how big a deal it was. And I spent an hour and a half clearing, everything except the one big log, which was too big, and trimming and various other things. And I know both homeowners, and people were home at both places, and it was 80 degrees out, and nobody came out to help. Nobody came out to say thank you. Nobody came out to even offer a glass of water.
Wow.
Wait, that address was what?
And my car was parked out front, and I spent an hour and a half going back and forth from the creek to the curb, so there's no way they didn't know I was there.
What's that address? That one.
403, 407 Woodview, maybe?
Woodview.
Right,
I have
right.
no clue where that is.
It's on the west side of Schoenbeck, just south of Hints, the newer homes there by Cherry Creek. The creek there is actually owned by whoever lives on the Cherry Creek cul-de-sac, owns one, and the other one is actually coming off of Cornell. They've got a really long, narrow,
Right.
like this, that takes in the creek, and the house is way over there, and so the people who see the creek, which right there in the backyard, don't actually own it. The city did a real weird
Yeah, 'cause
configuration to get the half acre.
when you take Cornell off of Hints,
Yeah.
which is basically dead ends into where the creek is, and that's the area where when the Lake Arlington gets too much water's coming down McDonald Creek, then flows over at that little area there, adjacent to where Cornell kind of dead ends into there. There's a spillway that goes into the Lake Arlington.
And we picked up all the trash along the park, and I was out there yesterday, and I saw like 2 cups, so it stayed pretty clean, which is nice. There's a lot of trash at the corner, the bridge by Cherry Creek there. That seems to collect a lot. We did not get to that. Just,
I think that one thing learned out of kind of just that and the discussion we're having is that I think we have to make sure that we continue to educate the residents that it's not really the city's responsibility, it's not the Creek
Right.
Commission's responsibility. I mean, we'll help from time to time, but at the end of the day, when you're an able-bodied person, or even if you're not an able-bodied person and you have the financial resources to maintain it and do it, you need to do it, especially if you're hiring a landscaper or somebody to maintain your property. To expect that somebody else is gonna come and clean the creek just because it's a creek that flows through your property. That's the part where I think our Creek Commission needs to continue to educate. This is your responsibility. We'll all share in some of that responsibility, but at the end of the day, it's private property. It's your problem. This should be for, occasional community events when there's a large problem that you can't deal with, or more of a community effort, but the rest of the time, you're expected to go down there and do all of those same things.
I think we might, since, I think I brought this up before, but since we continually vote down home rule, because a lot of residents want, a sense of small government, we need to emphasize that small government means you take responsibility, you don't expect somebody else to do it. You don't
Right.
expect the government to come in and, fix it for you.
I completely agree with, we need to basically continue to knock on people's doors with more paperwork and to establish. The one thought that I did have was, at my age, to get in there and
Right.
work in the creek, is to see if we can, at some point, find a landscaper that basically will develop into creek maintenance type. So that when we talk to residents and we say, hey, this is your responsibility. Well,
And
okay,
here's
who
who
do
we
I
can recommend.
call? That would do a good job the way we want it done at a reasonable price without you gouging the homeowner. So that's something that I don't know how we would go about finding a landscaper that's willing to have an offshoot of his business
just for land,
for
or,
doing that kind of work.
Prospect Heights residents.
Someone, maybe someone who's sending a flyer around looking for
additional work.
new work, or
Yeah.
somebody new, but then, I mean, do they know what they're doing?
Well,
Well,
it could be
the-
somebody too that might agree, but has a meeting with us.
Right, if
When
you
they
have,
know really what our expectations are.
yes, it would be
I'm just-
a combination training session with a contractor that might be interested in doing the work, including Public Works to go along with it.
Sure, then we can make recommendations.
And, you know, if for that landscaper, and when you're talking, you know, developing what he should plant, okay, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna maintain it, and establish the type of vegetation and stuff that they could put. And we as homeowners say, okay, no, I want you to do this, but I want you to also to do, so that they would have a price schedule and somebody that we would trust, that we would not mind recommending. And part of that would be training, like I said, by us,
That's a good idea. Before that, I would still like to, I know there's a lot of new people in the city. I know that from the number of people that didn't vote. And I know that from the number of people that come down Camp McDonald and get on the train every morning and back up way beyond my driveway. There's an awful lot of people that are not participating or interested in Prospect Heights as a city, my observation. I really think we too have to do something about, I think there's a lot of people that do not know where their property ends. And therefore, when we are asking them to take care of their property, a lot of them don't know that they own to the center of the creek. Where are they? They don't know that that's their responsibility.
well, you know.
They don't know how to read a survey.
Well,
or
if
deed.
they had one done before, their
Yeah, but
place
you know what,
was.
you don't even have to do that.
When you sell a house, you have to have a
Well,
survey.
Oh,
I
no.
understand, no, but for us, as a committee, with the brochure, we can go to the, USGS maps, floodplain maps. And there's one where I've got it with all the lots are shown, and where the creek is on that lot. Like mine, it'll show you, I own to the other side, so I own the whole thing. And if we target just that information when we send out, again, this campaign that we're talking about, brochures, to the homeowner, say, okay, here you are, and to their address, and you have the little map showing
Yep.
the floodplains around their property.
True, but do you think it's people don't know where their property ends or people don't care? I mean, some of those lots are
That may be
so far that
down our
Sure.
way.
But
Yeah.
along, yeah, but you gotta understand, along with that, when we start to emphasize more of what they as a homeowner's responsibility is for that on their property, which if we decided, or the city decided, to start fining people for not
Which they've done.
complying with the city ordinances, that's an incentive for people to take note.
How about we start with the Park District?
That would
They
be
own the large
largest
Right.
section.
check of it, and they, you know, I talked to Dino beforehand. He mentioned what we would like him to, you know, to address some of the larger, you know, if there's some large trees they have. I mentioned a couple that were down all the way across the creek, way too big for us to handle. And also that there was a big long thing of snow fence that's been laying in the creek there for some time, and asked could they clear that out. They didn't do a thing. I thought all he did is call me back. That was all he did.
What park? I'm sorry, I don't know that.
Along
area north of
Schoenbeck.
us.
All along Schoenbeck, there's about a mile stretch of, not a
as
mile,
I was
at least a
heading-
half a mile,
Yes.
that is Park District property. And it's
And
right,
Common-
and it's
Commonwealth
where the
Edison.
incoming from, where the
That's
outflow
before
from
the
Lake
curve
Arlington is.
comes like this.
Right,
up
before it goes
McDonald
under,
Creek. I know you're talking
Right,
about.
before it
Under
goes
town.
from Palatine Road, a
Almost,
half mile, at least a half mile
North, that's right,
to where the creek makes the big
right.
90-degree turn. And that's where the outflow from Lake Arlington is, that's where the biggest floodplain area is that's available.
see, you know, the other thing I don't really know is, where Commonwealth Edison runs down that whole piece of property there, where their property line is.
Well, you could tell where it is because they trimmed the trees underneath it. I mean, they denuded
Right.
the lane,
Right.
they took everything down. Crabapple trees that had no hope of ever getting past, 15
Yeah,
feet
that's
high,
their
they
policy.
chopped them up, down, even though the wires are 50 feet high. So they just have that narrow easement. And, that's another stretch, there's one stretch underneath them, in the ComEd easement, right where they, thing, and there's just like about 50 yards maybe, that's a wall of buckthorn, it's between, the ComEd easement and the pedestrian bridge there.
Mm.
It's Park District property, I've never seen anybody, it's not used for anything, no fields, no soccer fields, no nothing. It would be a good spot to perhaps try taking down some of the buckthorn and seeing if that would be a little bit more flood, just a small area of floodplain about the size of this, double the size of this room,
Right.
that might slow down, the volume and the velocity. Again, just one little ponding area that could impact downstream.
So,
That is doable. The reason I'm at is because it's a small area that,
why don't
Prospect
we
Heights
have
Natural
the
Resources
superintendent
Commission.
come in
like-
here and sit down with us?
I think that if we're gonna,
Because that's a public,
Right.
tax
Right.
paying.
The other thought was to solicit the homeowners who back up to that park to put some pressure on the park district to do something about it.
I think
Because they're not only not doing anything, they're contributing to the problem by just any branches that they trim or they just rake them to the creek
Right.
bank, the stream bank, and leave them there in big piles instead of taking them away when they
Well,
mow.
they need to be talked to.
I think if we're gonna do that, I think we're best if we work in conjunction with the Natural Resource Commission. If there's, then there's
Right.
more than just the five of us, it's our committee
Right.
and their commission. Basically, look, saying, you're not being responsible stewards, we're asking our residents, individual homeowners to be responsible, and you're not being responsible. We've talked about it before here about, the public entity should lead by example. At the end of the day, we recognize that they have a budget and they've gotta live with things, and I'm sure their attention is all about playgrounds and mulch and, all the, the things that people can touch and feel, but at the end of the day, if they're not being, cause I agree, that was one of the things that I noticed is the park district is, they're irresponsible in the way that they cut stuff and just kind of pile it up next to the creek as well.
They
And then
have a new director.
And what do you think happens when it
Yeah,
gets the
she
heavy
has not
rain?
been-
It washes into
She
the
doesn't
creek and it
know as
washes
much.
down, and then it plugs in the culverts and it ends up in private property
Right,
owner,
right.
and that's why.
And we're
I
not
think-
asking them to do a whole lot. We're not asking them
No,
to
just be
rebuild the
responsible.
park or whatever. Just
Right.
See, and here again, talking to
Get me started.
Mr. Roscoe from Public Works, say, how about a relationship between Public Works and let's say the Park District, when they cut all of this stuff, to make a deal that Public Works will bring their chipper over and take care of
actually,
it.
Public Work. No, I asked the Park District could they bring it. No, we don't have any equipment that could go down. The public, they left it for Public Works to pick up all the stuff that we dragged because they said they couldn't do that.
Public Works works with the Garden Club.
Mm-hmm.
They took down all the arborvitaes in front of the police department about 3 weeks ago, because I'm on beautification, we had to get all that stuff out of there. And so, and that's who did it, and they will do that.
I think the Park District should have been responsible for picking up all
Right.
the stuff because
Well, of course
we
they would.
piled all along the
Right.
cart paths. I mean, or the bike paths, so they had a paved way to get to it, and they just shrugged
Well,
and
I
said,
think-
Well,
I know what I
the
would
Public
do.
Works had a problem in that they don't have equipment to get down that narrow path to pick the stuff up that we cut in that area. So that becomes a problem too. So some coordination needs to be done between Public Works, what they can do, Park District, okay, here, you need to do this, let us get together, you do this, and I can do this. So we make a deal. One hand washing the other. And it's no different between, what I'm talking about is a landscaper that's willing to, that has the equipment, or the tree trimmers that do,
Right.
Well,
They've got all the equipment. I mean, when they come in, look at how long it takes them to do a tree. Boom, they take a tree down
It's
half
a little
an hour
lot, yeah,
long.
it's a lot harder on the creek bank, you know, there's a lot more to.
Well, I
distance to it.
understand, but somebody, depending on their business, how much spare time they have, you know, to keep busy, they might be interested in
Yeah.
taking on these kinds of issues.
Until the next ash borer comes through. I think it's
Well, I
walnuts
do.
that are going down
I
next.
really do think that that's, when you're talking about the park district, that's not the same as homeowners. That is
Right.
an agency of which we are paying money in our
Yes.
taxes.
Right.
Right.
Likewise, we are to the, you know,
And
to
they
our
shouldn't
city.
be just
Therefore,
about playgrounds, you know, there's a whole lot of other residents, friends, you know, pointed out in a survey a couple of years ago that they have absolutely nothing for adults other than their senior citizen trips.
And the golf course.
Yeah, but I mean, tennis courts and golf, but there's no leagues, no classes, no nothing. Paying taxes and get nothing back for it once your kids are grown.
And mostly river trails, so we are pretty much.
Well, so I think leveraging the Natural Resource Commission and the two of us get together and meet with the park and provide them with some, you know, some basic understanding of what the expectation is that we're holding our homeowners to, and say, look, you should be held to that same standard or even better. And start by removing the buckthorn and doing the things and keeping the creek clear. But then I think the enhancement of that is then creating this wetland area or short-term detention areas that could have native plants and so forth. And it sounds like the Natural Resource Commission already has the plants. They already kind of know what's going to grow there. It's just a matter of somebody at the park district saying, yeah, well, let's participate.
Yeah, we're not, and well, there's probably some grants available depending on where you look for
Yeah.
them.
Well, we're just really talking
But the park
about-
district has to participate in that usually.
In order
They
to,
have,
right. Yeah, there's IDNR grants right now for, that are available right now for, wetland restoration or whatever, matching grants, and that's exactly what you'd be talking about.
Shouldn't the first step be a meeting with the people that are responsible?
Yes.
Before we bring in that other, you know, the other commission?
Okay,
Well, they've already worked,
And they may have already up there, but I really think it's gotta start at the top, because they do have a new administrator. They
yes,
do have a
but
new one in charge and may not even know
she's
what
been
the-
there for she's been there 3 years now. She's been there about
that
3
long?
years, yeah. And she has not actually, the PHNRC has been trying to get them to stop dumping at Morava for the last 3 years. And they just keep, because it's the easiest spot. They've been doing, did it there for years and.
right by the golf,
No,
putting green.
right behind Morava there, by the
Behind
tennis
it.
courts, where PHNRC just spent the last 3 years cleaning up that whole area, and they put trails in and all this other stuff. Park District just keeps dumping it. I personally spent a day digging down to the bottom of that pile, flattening that pile. They came right back and just started
Well,
dumping
you know,
again.
it flooded and devastated the ball field there.
No, this isn't. This is at the
the
back,
other side.
Oh,
at the
okay.
very back. So it's up high. It's kind of high,
Oh, all right.
and they back their truck up and dump. And they've tried to get them to dump someplace else, and they show that it's
Isn't
too
there-
hard.
Isn't
It's
there
too
an
far.
ordinance that
Yes.
would apply to that?
About no
She's-
stockpiling landscape waste or something like that.
Right.
So and
know, 'cause
what's her name,
sometimes a
Claudia
fine
or whatever she is.
We'll say an awful lot.
I mean, that requires somebody at the city willing to find
Well, we
another.
do have the person in charge.
And she has not done.
No,
Anything
not
about
just at the park district. We do have the person in charge of public works, which
But
should have
she
a
doesn't.
designated
She doesn't.
spot.
He doesn't have control over Park District property.
Well, he may not, but
Then-
through
This
them
is
can
Park District
coordinate.
waste that's
They
getting
can
Then we really
coordinate.
need to have a joint meeting and
We
sit
do.
down and discuss our issues.
And perhaps they have bigger challenges that we're not aware of for
Right.
the reason
Well,
why.
that's what
To
they
give them
keep-
the benefit
Well,
of the
they're-
doubt, I guess maybe if we hear it firsthand, then we can be the
But
Yes.
how
judge
will
and
we
jury
guess
of
unless
whether or
we
not
hear
it's a
from
good
them?
enough reason, I guess.
Absolutely.
Um,
I don't
How can we
think.
guess unless we hear from them?
Well,
Right.
they have talked to them many times about this.
Well, then
I've talked to,
we need to make a commission official letter then.
I guess I'm willing to start by reaching out to her and inviting her to the next meeting and see if they'll come in and, the director, and see if they'll come in and talk to us about it. And we can certainly, I think it's only fair that we explain at least some of the issues or challenges that
Or
we
if they
have.
wanna invite us to one of their meetings.
And
we
invite
could just,
Public Works at the same
we could
time.
show up at a Park District Board meeting and,
Raise concerns.
but,
Well, you don't wanna,
We're not trying to alienate.
right, we're not
Right.
going as a hostile force, we'd like to be invited to discuss issues.
What other
what if
parks
we,
are
what
along
if
the
we,
creek?
what if you did a one-on-one with Christina Ferraro and brought the issue up to her one-on-one during, work day, during, her hours? I mean, we don't have to all together
Right.
approach
Why
her.
not?
One person would be sufficient to bring the concerns of the commission to her during her work day, instead of asking her to come to an evening thing. And if we get no response, then perhaps go
Right.
to a
Then
board
you
meeting.
put her on the spot at a meeting. I agree with that approach. I think that's the fair approach, and it might do us better in the long run.
Okay?
That person's not me, because.
I mean, I'm willing to do it. I guess I just
I'm
need to
willing to do
understand.
it too.
You
Okay.
want
I
it,
mean,
what-
I can do that kind of stuff too. I mean, I've been used to doing all that kind of stuff in
Okay.
negotiations. It's not intimidation,
You-
it's cooperation.
You and Hart wanna,
Sure.
have a meeting
Come
and
on, Hart.
go and represent the commission,
We can do that, Hart, come on.
chat with Christina?
Okay, but I'm out of town, I'm leaving tomorrow, so I
Oh.
won't be gone for a week.
There's
Well,
no
it's gonna
hurry.
rain for a week anyway.
Yeah.
There's no, this has been going on long enough,
Right.
it's not gonna matter a
It's
week
not
or
gonna
two.
matter.
Maybe you can get Dino to sit in with you too.
I would like
The
to know though,
superintendent.
where is the, in Prospect Heights, where is the waste area? Where,
Where the park district
where
dumps,
well, not just the park district, because when they took those trees down, all those huge arborvitaes, where did they put them?
what,
I also know that when we do the gardening in front of the police department and around and city hall and whatever,
When
we leave it there and they come and pick it up. Where do they take it?
if
I mean,
they
it needs-
chip it, they take
No,
it.
it's not chipping stuff.
If they chip it, they bring truckloads of stuff that they've chipped over to Pleasant Ridge Park, is that what it's called? It's on the border of Wheeling there. North of Palatine, on the east side of 83, there's the Forum condos over there.
Yeah,
It's behind there. There's a park. If you go down, what's it called? What's the name of that street? Pleasant. It's that Polo Run subdivision in Wheeling, and there's a park in the middle of that, halfway between 83 and Wheeling Road. And it's behind the school. There's a daycare that used to be a school back there off of
Right,
Drake,
right, right.
behind Drake. Well, right behind the school, there's a field that's in Prospect Heights. They play football there, and there's a baseball field, and there's a wooded area that they cleared out the brush, and that's where they've been dumping everything they chip
Below the trees.
That's chipping.
under the trees.
What
No,
do
they,
do?
they bring truckloads of stuff they've chipped and dump it all there.
But we're not just talking about chipping.
Well, I
we're
don't know if
talking
they
about
take
refuse.
everything.
Well, they
What
should be-
supposedly they
Weeding and-
pile it and then chip it later. They chip
If
it all
it's-
at one
If
time.
it's trees, right.
So
where is, they take all the landscapers, where they take all the stuff that
Probably
they
the
do?
Swank on Milwaukee Road, the
Mm-hmm.
transfer station, I would think. And
They'd have to pay a fee.
Well,
yes and no. I mean, it depends because a lot
they
of
dump
times,
a lot of it still at Marava, and then when they get around to it, like once or twice a year, they chip whatever they dumped.
I mean, a
Well,
lot of
some of it.
from what
Public
I
Works
understand,
does that.
No,
what I
Park
understand,
District. This is Park District.
a lot of the landfills are in need of organic material like that, so they usually will allow you to bring it there and dump it for free because they need cover to cover the garbage. Basically, they constantly need dirt or some type of organics because we're pulling all the stuff out of our garbage, and so you need some other organic materials to help build a proper landfill. At the end of the day, if we all have a landscape contract in our garbage to haul that stuff away, you would expect the city to do the same. You know, they're not allowed to stockpile, you know, landscape waste any more than a resident can't bring and stockpile. You know, if I have a landscaper living next to me and he starts bringing home truckload after truckload and stockpiling it, the city would have a problem with that. So I think the same way, I would imagine the city is a good steward as well. They stockpile it at Public Works, they chip it in their slow times, and I have noticed that the River Trail Park District has started doing that same thing, where they're basically chipping a lot of stuff and they're going and they're spreading it out in the woods, and in the trees. And you know, I don't know if that's appropriate or not, quite honestly. I mean, it seems to somewhat make sense on one hand. On the other hand, it also doesn't seem to make sense because it kills all the ground cover. You no longer have ferns or anything else to keep the soil stable beyond just the trees.
Buffalo Grove seems to stockpile it at a parking lot and tell homeowners they can pick up whatever they
Yeah.
want from mulch. So, a couple of years ago, the Public Works offered free mulch from
They
the
did.
stuff they chipped, but it's really coarse, and most people don't really want it for much except for, you know, a real junky area of your yard or something, because it's very coarse and full of a lot of junk.
Leaves and garbage and
Yeah,
rots away fast because it's not
so
hardwood.
they don't usually get many takers, I don't think. Anyway, well, whenever you guys, you know, want to make, if you can talk to Christina and Dino and suggest that some stewardship would be in order. And I mean, she'll probably immediately go, well, we don't have the money to do Somerset Park and this whole plan. Well, we're not talking about a big plan, just, you know, change a little bit of the way you're doing business already.
Right.
So what parks are you talking about?
Well, the
Somerset?
primary one, the what the creek goes through, I think it's Country Gardens in Somerset
And Gary Morava Center.
and Morava. Yeah. And they also, well, Walnut Woods is another one. That's
Yeah,
another
yeah.
place. They got big piles of stuff dumped along the creek side there too. So yeah, they own a lot of creek.
Is that considered Park District? Walnut
Yes.
Creek, it was donated?
Walnut Woods,
Walnut
yes,
Woods.
yes, it's donated to the Park District, I believe. Yeah, so they own
So
a
it's Country
considerable
Gardens,
amount.
Somerset, Walnut Woods, and
Morava
Morava.
are all the parks that the creek runs through.
Well, see, that does make it our concern,
Yeah,
because these are the ones that the creek all goes through.
Mhm.
yeah, these are, you know. So they're the primary creek owner in the town.
Not necessarily. But okay.
The single largest,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah, it would have to be.
So,
Yeah, it would go a long way to tell our homeowners that, you know, they're leading by example. This is the model that we want to follow. You know, what would be more embarrassing for all of us, them more than us, but would be that, you know, people look at that and say, well, they're piling stuff there, and I'm doing the same thing. You know,
Right.
particularly if you
Yeah,
got a resident
right.
on, you know, next to Walnut Woods, for example, you got the homeowners that live right on the other side of the creek. Well, if they look across the creek and see the park district doing it, then why wouldn't you do it the same way? If I don't have to drag it up to the front and put it out for the garbage, and I can just pile it up there, and then hope it falls in when they get a heavy rainfall, then, you know, that's
Country Gardens,
that's
you've
the
got
behavior we're
the
trying to
homeowners
change,
right on the
educate.
back side.
Yep.
And Somerset Park, you got homeowners on both sides of the park. So,
Okay, so what are we talking about when it comes to summer events?
does anyone want to do anything at that one day Summerfest? They're having some community day thing but you said that wasn't well attended last
This
year,
year
and it's,
even.
you said it wasn't very well attended, and
No,
I don't think.
We had a good time with the dog.
they probably don't even have a sign for us yet.
That was the community days, which is next weekend,
This
right?
coming Saturday.
It's
Yeah,
the
June
Saturday,
1st or
isn't it? The
something,
second
yeah,
Saturday.
so we don't,
Yeah.
you know, but the Summerfest
I've
one
never
is
been,
that
to be honest with
end
you.
of June. I have,
The black party or whatever.
yeah,
it is,
that one day block party,
Yeah, we
they
didn't do
sometimes do
that this year.
things, but I have,
Well, they didn't even know we were supposed to be there last year. They didn't even have a sign for
Right,
us.
you-
But,
Right, but
but Rick went home and got his stamp.
But
We're
we're already past
probably
that, so
better
it's-
off
it's-
working with the Natural Resource Commission, because they have something, and maybe just a little blurb as part of their
Do you
display.
want to, if somebody wants to participate, we can print some more materials and just set up a table next to them, but I have extended family
No
in
one's
town that weekend for a wedding,
I have a
so,
funeral
That's
on
this
Saturday.
one, this coming weekend?
no, this
or
is the
no,
last
this-
weekend in June, I think.
When we had the party in the park or whatever, right? Is that what
Yeah,
you-
that's the one that used to be the whole weekend, now it's just one day, one Saturday, end of June.
Unavailable.
Hmm?
I'm unavailable.
I don't know what I'm doing that weekend.
At least
I
for
don't,
this
I
Saturday,
mean, I
there's no
think
way I
I'm
can.
willing to help,
Should I, if, I can get stuff printed if you need more otherwise, but I
Okay.
won't be around.
Yeah,
They did say
yeah.
they needed to, last year, they needed to be informed that they needed a sign for us.
Well, we have to,
and that's the
They-
city.
yeah, they,
Or-
but
Marcia
this
Jennings
is,
handed out all those signs. She said, nobody ever does.
find out what their
But that, yeah, but that was that was for
That
this,
was for this
the
Saturday.
whatever. that is,
Community
Days
But
this
you're talking
Saturday.
about the party in the black party or party in the park or whatever.
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you still get Lake County stormwater management brochures, the printed ones?
I mean,
Walk
yeah,
off with a hand.
yeah, I mean, I can get
I mean, we
brochures.
don't need,
Okay, any ones in particular that you liked more so than others?
whichever ones you think. I
Okay.
don't know.
I have some
I
extra
have some,
bulletins.
probably have a
Ours.
dozen, ours,
I have some extras of ours.
okay.
Okay. Yeah, I can work on the Lake County stuff.
Because there will be mostly Prospect Heights people coming.
Yeah,
I've
and
got
then,
about that many.
and then, I mean, there's only like 100 some who live on the creek, and let's say a third of them came, it's still
Right.
only like 30 people.
Right.
And 10 of them will take something, so.
Well, and it's even more than just the people on the creek. At the end of the day, I think there's, the more, even the people that don't live on the creek that we get involved in it, and at least, those people
Do
can
you
talk
wa-
to their neighbors.
Right.
'Cause like I said, I don't live on the creek, myself,
That happened
but I
one
see the
year.
value of
Okay.
it, and certainly,
Do you want to try and like raffle off a rain barrel or something?
I got
Or
one in my garage you can
have a rain barrel there just as
If
an
I have the bigger
exhibit?
things, so I'd have to buy to adjust it.
As
Get bigger,
for what you
bigger.
could, maybe just put a poster of the simplest things you can do, like don't drain your gutters into the swale.
No, I mean, having a
A
rain
couple of
barrel
simple
there for
things,
people
have
just
a-
to see what it
It
looks
just,
like.
it just attracts attention.
Yeah,
You say you
that
have
is
one,
new.
you have,
Yeah, never been used. Rick has the
Yeah.
other one.
yeah, I mean, that would be a nice thing just for a
Yeah.
display model,
Yeah.
I agree.
Do you need a
Oh, we're gonna raffle it off. We're gonna sell it. John and I are gonna
I actually gave away the two that I got too. I mean, I already had bought two of them, from the Lake County thing, and then I, got a couple from the MWRD thing when they did it, and you can only use so much water.
yeah.
I
they
would
fill up
gladly
pretty quick.
get it out of my garage.
Oh, there you go, we'll raffle it off for you.
Okay.
You do,
So
like
you want
PH
that,
at
when do you
RC,
want
if
that
you
one?
give you your.
Saturday? Are you doing
Not
Saturday?
No, this
Yeah,
is
this
the
is-
end
this
of,
will
the
be
last,
the
it's the
end
end
of
of
June.
June,
End
it's
of
the end of
June.
June.
This is when they had the band and
They have the band and they have the,
Food
they have
trucks and all
some food,
Okay. Oh, and they have it at Gary Morava, don't they?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good draw. People
Right.
will,
Yeah, you
put
get-
free rain barrel, and people will come over to see how they get that
And
free
if you
rain
get,
barrel.
if they
and,
give you
well,
your
it's lucky
email
they are.
address, then, and then we can add the email address to, natural resources list and
There you go.
start to have a,
Okay.
Okay, John,
Alright.
whenever you're ready to take it out the garage, just give me a shout.
All right, that's
okay.
good.
Any other, interesting items for,
No, I'm looking at the gauge readings. What were we doing on that one?
I have
Yeah.
some, I do have some, like I said, I pulled them up, but I had
Those were from-
issues with my computer this week that I didn't get resolved.
What were they from?
But the gauge, you can get historical readings from going back.
USGS?
USGS from the gauge by you, and there's one
Yes.
up by Cornell, I think.
Okay, I don't know about that one.
No, they
Okay.
told me the only one in Prospect Heights was the one right on the bridge, which
Yeah, but
is,
in Cornell, that might be either Arlingtonite.
Yeah.
oh, another
Might be,
one.
but it's on McDonald Creek, you know, well, in that
Yeah.
area, so.
And as far as, well, they take their readings, but if you wanted to, you know, paint a bridge with markings of where the water level is and keep track of it that way, I don't know how else you would.
Well, you know,
Just-
I mean, when we were discussing that, it would be nice to know, depending on the rainfall, and to see, okay, I get so much rain, here's what the creek is doing.
Mhm.
And based on the rain gauges, and if all of a sudden we see a change in what happens from a normal, what should happen, that'll
Your
give us a
baseline.
clue, hey, we got a problem in this area, we need to go look at it. So, you know, that's how you really monitor a stream, is several points along the stream. So in a normal rainfall, you know, let's say a half inch in 2 hours,
Except-
here's what I should see for the next 3-4 hours. Boom, 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 boom. But if all of a sudden I get it here, and this gets high, and this stays low, I got a blockage somewhere.
Right, nice.
I have something that's also USGS stuff. They came out and spent 2 days putting up new measurement equipment.
Oh, they did?
Yes, they did, and they need a more accurate and consistent reading. I talked to the guys, and we can get accurate information from them on the readings.
Okay.
And but they were there 2 days, and they relocated it over a little more toward the center.
Just
Of
this
course, they're
past month?
Oh yeah, and their little hut that has all the equipment in there is across on Camp McDonald.
Mhm. Do you have a gauge number?
No, they just come and do it.
No, no,
Oh, yeah, there's a number,
There's a
on the
number,
Yeah,
website.
do you know what it is?
Yeah, but I'm just saying, okay, how do we get on our computer if I wanted to access it and take a look at it?
Well,
You have to know the gauge number to look it up,
Yeah,
but you
or
can
you-
find
yeah,
it.
you can
no, he
follow
said
it.
just go to USGS, and it seemed to where you're located. He
You could
said
find
the
it,
city could
but-
do it as well too.
All right,
But it only tells you that one reading.
Right.
The
you know.
comparisons is what probably we need.
Well, it does
because
have comparisons, I mean, I've been to the.
You could get, yeah, I've got the historical data.
Yeah, it'll
on
show
it,
you a
but,
graph that 24 hours produces this amount, this level and depth, and you know, this one is gonna, you know, that's what, you know, I've been for the last month now getting emails, you know, every time the flood rises, it, you know, basically I get an email that says that the flood's at 12.9 feet and 13 foot is the flood level, 13.5 is minor flood level, and this road or this path is gonna be underwater or whatever, and so that's what they use all that data for. I'm not subscribed for the one on Camp McDonald or on McDonald Creek. Honestly, mine are Des Plaines River and the Fox River, which our creek feeds to. But you know, so that same thing. That's what that point is. And so there is a public website that you can go and see that. I think the problem is that there's just so few of them that you can't use the data for what you're describing, which is, you know, every block or every few blocks where you have, you know, the different levels,
Right.
and being able to say, you know, why is this level so high and this level so
you know,
low?
and part of our issue is, I don't know that when you talk about the displays, people realize that McDonald Creek will go backwards.
Right.
As the Des Plaines comes up, it backfills and basically gets to the Euclid-Wolf intersection, and is the clearance height of that bridge is the backup actually of the Des Plaines River.
And that's why in the past, our people went down and cleared, even though it was Mount Prospect, they would go down and clear all of the debris
Yes.
down there. And they would take, what's his name was Dwayne. He would go down there with the crew, and they would clean it out, so the water would get out of Prospect
Well,
Heights as
before
fast
we
as
were a
possible.
city, we used to do it. That's the one where I almost lost my neighbor. Because before the Sioux Line Railroad, it was just 4 pipes. And they were, I think, like 2 feet, 3 foot pipes. So all of that water basically hits that wall, had to get through there, and it would be blocked up with debris. And we were cleaning it, and he, of course, he was in it like this, the water flowing once he pulled the branch out. Luckily, we were able to
Wow.
yank him out.
And there's 4 holes, but usually only 2 are operative.
Yeah,
And if
and
the
you know,
debris
then
comes
since then,
down,
they
it
built
blocks
that
it
new
badly.
structure and with the bypass and with the, move the tracks and,
Well, that's what Public Works does, is clear culverts, so
Right.
they pay attention to those.
But not down there, cause it's Mount Prospect.
Right.
I
Well,
would
we
think
assume
Mount
that Mount
Prospect does,
Prospect
cause they've
Public
had,
Works
does.
they had the worst flooding last year, or was it last July? Was in Mount Prospect section over there, so I'm sure they're paying attention to
well,
it.
like I
I'm
said,
sure
when
the
the
park
displays
district
get so high, it backs
Backs
up,
up.
comes up Burning Bush through that
Mm-hmm.
area and backs all the way up.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, I got a creek that's full, it's not moving because it's coming the other way, and now I've got everything coming down, trying to get
Somewhere.
somewhere, there's nowhere for it to go.
The other thing two other things happened. On Foster Avenue, you know, they put water mains up there, all along Foster Avenue, okay? And they flushed out really 3 times that I know of. I think it's only 3. They flushed out fire hydrants on that street, and they flushed them into the Wheeling area that flowed down to the north side of the bridge and put everything down into the creek. Okay, when I heard water dripping under the bridge, I'm going, where is that coming from? Is there a hole in the bridge? Okay, so then I walked across Camp McDonald and I'm looking this huge water running all the way from Foster Avenue down into the creek on that ledge, you know, that's not supposed to be there, or that's big. Okay, so anyway, I thought, I'm gonna walk over there. I don't know where it's coming from. So I walked over there, and of course I see the fire hydrant just flushing water out like mad because it's coming up with all the hydrants and all the water down Foster. So a guy happened to be coming in that was wheeling, and I stopped him. He must have been one of the supervisors. And I said to him, so I couldn't figure out where the water was coming from, but now I know. And it's going down into the creek. And so I just said to him, does Prospect Heights know you're putting all this water into the creek? Oh, probably they know, he said. We just have one more, he said, just 1 or 2 more flushings to do.
This is the fire department?
No, this was Wheeling.
No, the Wheeling Fire Department
No,
flushing
No, it would be
hydrants?
the
No,
construction
it's the
crew that installed
construction
the
crew
new
that
water
did it.
main.
Well, they
And the
can't
supervisor
open
from
hydrants,
Wheeling-
can they?
Well, the supervisor from Wheeling,
Public Works.
Public
probably.
Works, was
Not
the
Jim
one
Kelly.
that was, I'm not sure who it was, he didn't tell me who it was. But all I know was this water had been flushing down, and then as I noticed, and Rick kinda noticed it yesterday too, we've been talking about this for a long time. The silt buildup on the bridge, under the bridge, is building big time. And at some point, when we get a high water, either back up or the next flood, it is going to go to the bottom of that bridge. It's close, the last one was that far from the base of that bridge. And then, of course, it comes over the top and it runs in and erosion and all that kind of stuff that's really bad. And Rick gets it up to his little shed and la la la. The silt is building up again big time. It's somebody, we've got to find out how we get MWRD to come out there and start to do something. Because the silt is just raising the level of that creek, which is just gonna cause more flooding on everybody's properties or erosions. And I don't know, it's almost to the point where I'd like to use the word urgent. We can't be waiting for MWRD and their plan in 10 years. The properties are gonna be gone.
Does anybody have any idea where all the silt is coming from?
I don't know, I
Well,
was
it's-
suspicious that it might be coming from that ledge from the flushing out, but I don't think I think it's coming from up north somewhere.
It would take a long
And just
time.
gathering under that bridge.
It takes a long time for sediment to build up. And
Oh, it's
certainly
been
one
doing it.
one crew, one flushing is not going to do that. I guess
No.
do we have historical data on how deep the creek was previously versus how deep it is today? I mean,
Yes.
recognizing that what you're talking about is dredging the creek to a deeper level so that it
All the way
increases the
down.
capacity. The downside to that is that the deeper you go, the faster it's going to fill back up from the Des Plaines River. Because the Des Plaines River is at whatever level it is at, the deeper you dig our creek, the more water is coming up the river from McDonald Creek. So the more sediment that builds up, the less water we take from the displays, because our level
No,
is.
it's not coming from the display, we're getting it out of the.
Well, that's what but I'm
Okay.
saying, if you dig it deeper, water's always gonna go to the
You're,
lowest
you're
level.
talking the sediment right by you.
I'm talking about the center, yeah, there's a huge island underneath that bridge,
Right.
they don't have, they claim, they don't have the
But
equipment to
here's
get it out of there.
here's the problem with that area. When they did Foster Avenue and all that industrial park over there, they put on-stream detention. So McDonald Creek, as it came through and went under the bridge there. So what they did is they widened it. So all of a sudden I've got a flow, certain cubic, feet per second coming, and I hit this area that's wide for on-stream detention. Water slows down,
Drops
sediment
the
goes
sediment.
up.
Right.
And what you see there now, that's like a bank or what it is, all sediment
And trees that grow.
and trees and everything else that have built up over the years, ever since they allowed, and that was Wheeling that did that, or Mount Prospect, I can't remember,
Wheel- but
Well, it would be
wheeling.
wheeling.
that it allowed them to do on-stream detention. So the solution, the only solution there is to reestablish the creek banks so that you keep the creek there and the speed to keep the sediment moving, rather than come and then
Fall
being
out.
able to fall out at that point. So, between that and how they angled the inlet and outlet, coming into it when they redid the
Well, that
bridge.
certainly would help the angle a little bit more.
Right. But I'm saying, there's a lot of history that's created that some things need to be done or sacrificed. The on-stream detention, obviously, if it's filled up, doesn't work anymore.
No, and the guy across, my neighbor
You know.
across, makes it even worse, but whatever.
So, a decision by engineering or somebody, or getting
Yeah,
together with
but
Mount
that
Prospect
kind
or
of-
Wheeling.
It's critical.
That kind of creek engineering, you gotta
Yes.
look at the whole picture, the whole creek,
Right,
and it's
of
a
what's
very,
happening
it's very,
there.
you're talking millions of dollars.
No,
Right.
no.
But it still, it
Because
could
you
be-
can't do a creek, just this one little section,
Right.
No,
you're,
we
But
need to,
it just may be in that
it's
area
in
there,
that area.
you need to go ahead and either put a solid, wall and build the
Right.
land up so that you don't get all this sediment deposits like you're doing now. So and this again, when you're saying there's MWRD and maybe some, this could be a project that needs to be looked at and understood, and maybe between communities, put in.
Sharing.
so this is the kind of thing you would want to get put into the Lower Des Plaines River watershed plan.
Right. That's what it sounds
A
like.
little
Yeah.
bit sooner than that, please.
No,
Well, I mean, somebody
That's
needs
how
to
these things
establish
get done.
what the distance from the bottom of the bridge down to the bottom of the creek was previously. So let's say it was 14 feet. Now it's 7 feet.
We
You know
probably
that
have that, I might even have that in my.
now you know
records when
that
they
there's
built the
7 feet of
bridge.
sediment that doesn't belong there.
Right.
But again, but to Kathy's point, you can't just carve out one area and not expect that the next time everything else is going to come down.
Right.
It's still going to settle down there. You have to address the banking issue. They always want the creek to naturally spread out, but at the same time, and during low flows, you always want the creek concentrated in the middle. So
Yes.
it sounds like now it's got a complete flat bottom, so that even on the low flows, it's flowing across the entire
Yes.
creek bottom when it's supposed to be a V channel. So during low flows, you get
Yeah.
water right down the center that's only a foot wide, or for
Right.
example, and then during high flows, it fills up the entire bank or the entire
Yes.
basin, and then but that's the way that it naturally should go.
What you would.
And so, if I think having that conversation with MWRD to say, do you know what this used to look like, and do you know what it looks like now? Maybe that is, something that's the approach to take, because they should have historical data on that.
Yes.
If there's a gauge there, I would imagine one of the data points that they're collecting is, where, the
Yes,
depth
they
of
are.
the
They
depth
walk
of
the
that
creek,
of that bridge or the
No, that's.
But as we
risky.
learned from when they were here, their priority is always in impact on structures.
Right.
And this
that
doesn't
brings me to the
impact
next one.
structures.
Well, it
Here's the
would
structure,
when,
it's the bridge.
if it's to the way that you're describing, Jan, where that now when there are heavy rainfalls and you only have a foot, because once the water starts hitting the bottom of the bridge, my understanding is you can't use that bridge, during that interim time. You know, they'll usually close a bridge. When there's water all the way up to the bottom of the bridge, bridges are not designed, they're not a culvert. A culvert can be completely full of water, flow all day long, you can drive over it, that's what it's designed for, but a bridge is designed so that it's always dry on the bottom. You know, you don't want that water all the way up to the bottom of the things. Typically, they'll close the bridges, and so if it's as close as what you're describing, then it could be an emergency, or it could be
Well,
more
they
of
built the bridge
of a
for,
serious
to
situation.
avoid the 100-year flood. They even actually raised the road, they had to come back and raise the road to raise that bridge up for the 100-year flood. Okay, and the marking on that 100-year flood is exactly on the abutment that's right into my property. Okay, and I know exactly where that is. That abutment, when that water has come and it's high, that 100-year flood, now the bridge would be maybe 2 feet from there, the base. But that 100-year flood marking that is right there that they put in is, well, let's see, in time, maybe a couple of times it's gotten almost to the top of that, but that's still left another couple of feet
Right.
to get up to the bridge, because they tried to build it high enough so it wouldn't happen. But interesting, the other thing that's happened with this knee thing, I'm home more often. Cook County, IDOT showed up. This was last week. And the trucks sit there, wait, and then 2 other trucks, and then I had to go, and they had to open the driveway. They were out there blowing and doing all this stuff on the sidewalks and everything. And so I just wandered out in curiosity, like a 5-year-old, what are you guys doing? Cleaning the bridge. They're cleaning everything off. I said, oh, that's good. There's a lot of junk and weeds there that, that's good. And then I said, asked him, I said, so how come you're just gonna do that and go? Because they had 3 different trucks there. I go, this is weird. And then he said, no, he said, we're getting ready for an inspection. And all I said to him was, I have to readjust my picture frames quite a bit, because on the far side of Camp McDonald, when those heavy trucks, see, now that Foster Avenue's there, and now that a lot of those big trucks are coming up Camp McDonald now to get to 83. And so as they bump over that bump, yeah, I can feel it. And not just that, and then they have apparently at some point, I didn't see it, they put some asphalt kind of to help fill in. And then I just said to the guy, okay, and he's kind of standing on my side, I said, okay, so does that include the separation that's right over here? Which is on my side in the right away, right at the beginning of that riprap stuff that they put in to try to make it solidify. Right now, the snakes are having a good time, I think, in there. But, so he said, oh yeah, I noticed that. And he wasn't just poo-pooing me. So I don't know, it's just another thing that happened right there at that spot. I think I know why I was called the Creek Maven several years ago, when Judy used to call me. When was the last time? Do you have a picture of? I go, yeah. Okay,
Well, that's
all I'm going to report.
Okay.
bridge inspection's good.
Yeah. Doesn't mean they'll act fast on anything,
Oh,
any
no,
deficiencies. You know, I think the reality of it, we read about it in the paper. 60% of the bridges in the state are deficient, and until there's a capital budget, until they raise the gas tax or whatever they ultimately decide to do,
There's
there's
big
really
3-foot chunks that have fallen off the brand new Palatine Road Bridge.
Oh, is that right?
It's just, it's not structural stuff, but still, that bridge is brand new.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else?
Goodbye.
They've been busy at your
Oh,
neck.
yeah, that's a location that's really something over there all these years.
Well, the waters of the creek's very high, but I haven't.
We're lucky,
Other
we're
than
very lucky.
it's not.
We've had enough
Oh,
rain
yeah.
for sure, but it's been in our area. Prospect Heights and around our area were getting
You know,
arrested
the
between
one
storms.
day Willow Road was closed again a couple
Yes,
weeks
I
ago.
saw
We
that.
had the big, but curiously, well, we noticed the slough was like underwater where it usually isn't, but the house on the other side of 83 that is used, the yard is usually underwater, was dry.
Means they
That
cleaned the
was-
culverts under the road finally
Right.
under 83.
Yeah.
That's what that means.
Because for years that yard has been, you
Right.
know,
Oh, yeah.
And
And-
suddenly it was on the other side and it just took out all their plantings and everything. They were kind of upset.
Now I do know on,
Drowned them all.
across from Rick, I have noticed, Rick, that water is just still sitting there.
Where?
On
It
the
hasn't
ditch.
drained at all in the ditch, and the guy, the
Mhm.
neighbor that put all the dirt in, it doesn't matter, cause that water is still right up to his driveway.
If the
How
And
long
it's so
does this
sad
water sit
because
there?
the mosquitoes and all that stuff, you know,
Mhm.
last week I was
and
looking
it's
at
the-
green.
The water across the street from me has probably been there at least a week. if not
Yeah, at
longer.
least a
Stuff on the west side of
West
Alton
side of
and
Alton.
the ditch
Oh,
line.
yeah.
Yeah.
That is an issue that needs to be addressed. A week is not a reasonable time frame for water to be sitting there. It is a
Oh,
mosquito
absolutely, yeah.
breeding ground.
That was the guy on Kenilworth too. His ditch never dries, and he's got water-loving plants, weeds growing. in
Well,
it.
I mean, this is like
Yeah.
6 inches to a foot. I mean,
Yeah, this guy does.
I mean,
too.
wet
He's,
enough that you can't mow it is frustrating. I see that throughout
Mhm.
throughout Prospect Heights. There's there's neighborhoods that have cattails that grow in their front ditch.
Right.
Right.
I've seen that.
They just were not.
But I don't think I've seen any of them where there's water. You're talking a full block pretty much where water is almost a foot deep that just sits there.
Yep.
It's a pool.
Yeah, that's
The
a-
ducks
Is that
like it.
poor
Safety.
grading or somewhere down
that's
the
where they need to
line?
put a culvert under the road all the way down to the creek, right? And that's
No, there
through
is
private.
one there.
And what's the issue with
It's,
that?
the issue was apparently it wasn't
That
put
doesn't,
in.
that doesn't go all the way to the.
Doesn't go to the.
By Dean? Is that what you're talking about?
No, that maybe the attachments, no, I'm trying to think, cause the drain comes underneath my property,
Have you had
from Rob Roy.
Mark Roscoe come out and look at that? I would at least make it, because it seems to be a relatively simple solution. It's going to cost a little bit of money, but looks like my diagnosis of it, because I have been paying attention to it, is that you'd have to put a culvert from the west side of the road under Alton, and then you get an easement between two of the homes, whether it's you're the second home or third home.
First home on the.
You're
He's the
the, you're the
first
first
on
home,
each
so then, this, one of those homes, in the lowest spot in the ditch line, you get an easement between that residential property on the other one, and you run a culvert, right down the property line, and that water would ultimately drain to the creek, and that way it'll dry up during,
They could just attach it to the big one that's coming down from Rob Roy, that flows down by mine, that's 36 inches.
if that culvert's low enough, but if that culvert's already higher, you
I
can't.
don't know that there is a culvert in there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. The culvert that runs down along Camp McDonald from Rob Roy could be at, that's at 622, and that ditch line at the bottom of the ditch line, it's at 621. You can never get that water, you know what I'm saying, to go up to that.
Yeah,
Unless
right.
you put a pump system and pump
Right.
it, nobody wants that
Right.
because then it's not gonna be maintained. So you need a gravity fed system, and really it could even be a small 4-inch drain tile or an 8-inch, it doesn't need to be that much, cause you're not talking a lot of water.
No.
It's just the water that sits there for a long period of time. The heavy flows, that probably does drain back to Camp McDonald and goes into that same culvert, but then once it gets to a certain level, this water is below the culvert level, and so then it just sits there and it's never gonna go away until, it naturally soaks in, which if it's not the right soil, it's not going to. So I mean, Public Works, I would at least have a conversation with them, he'll tell you that, no, there's no easy solution, and that's just the way it is, or, yeah, that's a simple enough solution, we'll put it in the project plan, and,
Right.
particularly with, cause Alton was resurfaced, they really should have done
Yeah,
it before
especially
they
if you got
resurfaced.
a foot of water that's been in there
Oh,
for weeks, it's just, that's,
that's been
Right,
going on
that's,
for a long
yeah,
time.
that's not,
That's nuts.
anybody I think will agree with you that that's a health and sanitation issue, with the mosquitoes and all the other things that, a 3-day time frame I think is the reasonable, thing, that after 3 days of no rain, it should dry up, and it might not be dry enough that you can necessarily mow it right away, but at least there's not standing water. Anything beyond that, you do have a right to say it needs to be fixed.
The house on the corner, when they built that, they had to get permission from the city to raise it. The guy who was a contractor, he raised the house and he lived in it for a little bit. And they raised it, but they wouldn't approve the backyard being anything but a retention area.
Mm-hmm.
So when Rob Roy and that 8th hole gets high on that ponding, it goes underneath. I don't know that it's coming over the top anymore, but the actual water that's underneath from Rob Roy, from that ponding,
Fills
will
up his
also
yard.
they'll go into that retention area that is in the guy's backyard, which is on the Alton side street.
Right.
There is a little drain at the back of their property, I see, I don't know if it's working, that actually is coming into that ditch.
That feeds it water.
Maybe.
And maybe that's the problem. Maybe something was just designed wrong, or it wasn't, you know, somebody did something
Right.
after they did it, you know. So, I mean, it's worth making the phone call. You know, you're not acting in your capacity on the commission, you're acting in your capacity as a normal homeowner that says, you know, I've got a reasonable expectation that after 3 days this is gonna dry up, and, you know, so.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, that's.
Rick's the one that has to look at it, not
It's
me.
been there since,
Day
since I
one,
lived
isn't
there.
it?
It's
Yeah, I
been
mean,
there.
I would at least, I mean, Mark is a new public works director, and I think he wants to do the right thing by the community, and, you know, certainly recognizing he's got more problems than he can fix, today or tomorrow or this year even, or next year even, but, you know, once he's aware of it, then we can start to get frustrated after a certain amount of time frame and nothing's been done, you know, so I think it's worth at least having that conversation and seeing where it goes.
Okay, next meeting date is, when we're doing that? Do we have a date?
Not last week of June.
When do we
Unless
need to, do we need to sign up for that block party, or?
I don't know, probably. I'll look into that, let
Okay.
you know.
I apologize for a message to you, Kathy, I had my week screwed up.
Oh, sorry, I don't check home email till I get home. The last week of June is a bad
Okay.
week, don't you think?
When's July the 4th? I don't have a calendar.
It's the one here.
Thursday.
Yeah, it is a Thursday this year.
Do we,
So June the 20,
It would be June the 25th is the
week before.
4th.
Okay, that's,
and do you think you'll have something to report from the Park District?
By June 25th.
Sure, how long are you gonna be gone?
just be going a week.
Do you wanna?
Going somewhere dry.
Yeah, where's that, without the tornadoes?
Southern Arizona, maybe.
No, California,
Oh,
Modesto.
You wanna leave it on the calendar for now and just
Play it
email
by
me
ear.
the week before, and we need to,
Okay, so
like 10 days notice?
tentatively the 25th, right?
Yep.
okay.
Same time?
yeah,
May not be the same place though.
Right.
well, this is fine.
This is big enough
Yeah,
for us.
it's nicer.
It's a lot easier to have a conversation this way,
Oh, yeah,
That's true.
I agree.
so.
All
Okay,
right, did I make a motion?
to adjourn.
Second.
Adjourn.